welcome everybody. Welcome to the Storefront Theatre's presentation of A Christmas Carol, a three-person adaptation by Judy Simpson Cook. Who doesn't know her? Well, I'm her if you don't know, and are too embarrassed to say so. I'm always coming up with something. I try to come up with things that are a little different. And when we've done this show in the past, we had a small choir to sing Christmas carols. And I don't have a choir this year. Or I didn't, until you got here. So if you would, please join me in a chorus, perfect to set up the show, of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power.
Quiet! Quiet! Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. I, Ebeneezer Scrooge. And my name is good for anything I choose to put my name to. Yes. Oh, Marley was dead as a doornail. I knew he was dead. Of course I did. How could it be otherwise? He and I were partners for I don't know how many years. I was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary, legatee, his sole friend, and sole mourner. And even I was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event. I was a man of business, and on the very day of the funeral and solemnized the occasion with an excellent bargain.
Oh, but Scrooge was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner.
Hard and sharp as flint, secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster.
He carried his own low temperature, always about with him. He iced his coffee in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas.
External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him.
No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty.
Nobody ever stopped me in the street to say, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored me to bestow a trifle. No children asked me the time. No man or woman ever once in all my life inquired the way to such and such a place. But what do I care? It's the very thing I like, to edge my way down the crowded paths of life, warning all humanity to keep its distance.
Once upon a time, of all the good days in the years, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already.
My office door was open so that I might keep an eye upon my clerk, Bob Cratchit, who was in his own dismal little office copying letters. Suddenly, I heard the cheerful voice of my nephew.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you.
Bah, humbug.
Christmas? A humbug, Uncle. You don't mean that, I'm sure.
And do? Well, what right have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough.
Bah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas! What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Nephew! You keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it, but you don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone, then. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I might have derived good by but by which I have not profited, I dare say, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time. A kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they were really fellow passengers to the grave. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say, God bless it.
You're quite the powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament.
Don't be angry, uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow.
No.
But why? Why? We have never had any quarrel in which I have been a party. Well, I have made the offer in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, a Merry Christmas,
Good afternoon.
and a Happy New
Good
Year.
afternoon. And then he left the room, stopping to bestow the greetings of the season on Cratchit, who returned with them. My clerk, with 15 shillings a week and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. And worse, in letting my nephew out, Cratchit let 2 other people in.
Scrooge and Marley, as I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago. This very night.
We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessities, hundreds of thousands in want of common comfort, sir.
Are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the union workhouses, are they still in operation?
They are still. I wish I could say they were not.
The treadmill and the poor law are still in full vigor, then?
Both very busy, sir.
Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it.
Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth.
Why?
We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to remain anonymous.
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, sir, that is my answer. I don't make myself merry at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I am taxed enough to support the establishments I have mentioned, and those that are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there, and many would rather die.
If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Besides, it is not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon. And with that, they very clearly saw that it would be useless to pursue their point, and they withdrew, and I, in a very good mood, returned to work.
Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened. The ancient tower of a church became invisible and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds, with tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering in the frozen head up there. The cold became intense. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived, and Scrooge confronted his clerk.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
If quite convenient.
It's not convenient and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
But, sir, it's only once a year.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning.
Oh, I will, sir, I will.
The office was closed, and my clerk ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could to play at blindman's bluff, no doubt, with his rambunctious brood.
Scrooge took dinner in his usual tavern, and, having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's books, went home to bed. As he approached the black old gateway of the house, the fog and frost hung thick.
Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door.
Except that it was very large.
Yes, very large.
It is also a fact that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in London.
Let it also be borne in mind that I had not bestowed one thought on Marley since the mention of him earlier that afternoon.
So then let any man explain how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw the knocker not a knocker.
No, not a knocker.
Not a knocker.
Not a knocker. But Marley's face.
It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look. As he gazed fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again.
To say that I was not startled would be untrue. But I put my hand upon the key, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted my candle. I did pause before I shut the heavy door, and I did look cautiously behind it first, but there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on. There, I said, and closed it with a bang. But before I locked it for the night, I walked through my rooms to see that it was all right. And all was as it should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet. Quite satisfied, I locked myself in, double-locked myself in, which was not my custom. Thus secured against surprise, I took off my cravat, put on my dressing gown and slippers, and my nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take my gruel.
As he threw his head back in his chair, his glance happened to rest upon Belle. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house.
This might have lasted half a minute, or a minute, but to him it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun, together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain of the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Then the cellar door flew open in a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below. Then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door.
It's humbug still. I won't believe it. But then it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before my eyes. Marley! It was Marley's ghost. He wore a chain about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail, and it was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent. I looked the phantom through and through, and saw it standing before me. How now? Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
You're very particular for a ghost. Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
What do you want of me?
Much.
Well then, can you sit down?
I can.
Do it then.
You don't believe in me.
I don't.
What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?
I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. And there's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. You see this toothpick?
I do.
You are not looking at it.
But I see it, notwithstanding.
Well, I have but to swallow this and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you. Humbug.
Oh!
Mercy, dreadful apparition! conversation. Why do you trouble me so?
Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do. I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men, and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me! And witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness. Whoa!
You are fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full and heavy and as long as this. 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebeneezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. Very little more is permitted of me. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our counting house. Now, I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere, and weary journey lies before me.
But you are always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business! Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raised them to the blessed star which led the wise man to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me? Hear me! My time is nearly gone.
I will, but don't be hard on me, Jacob.
I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebeneezer.
Oh, you were always a good friend to me, thank you.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over, Jacob?
Expect the second or the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more. And look that, for your own sake, you will remember what has passed between us.
When it had said these words, the apparition walked backwards from me, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. Then the spectre floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Marley's ghost bothered me exceedingly. I thought and thought, and thought it over and over, and I could make nothing of it. Was it a dream or not?
Dong.
The hour bell sounded with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of Scrooge's bed were drawn aside by a hand, and he found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them.
It was a strange figure, like a child and yet not like a child. Its hair was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
Your past.
What business brings you here?
Your welfare.
Might not a night of unbroken rest have been more conducive to that end?
Rise and walk with me.
How can I? I am a mortal.
Bear but a touch of my hand, and you will be upheld in more than this.
As these words were spoken, we passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. It was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. Good heavens, Spirit, I was bred in this place. I was a boy here.
Your lip is trembling. And what is that upon your cheek?
Nothing. Lead me where you will.
You recollect the way?
Remember it? I could walk it blindfold. Every gate, every post, every tree. Oh, look, coming towards us, it's boys from the school on their shaggy ponies. What great spirits they are in, shouting Christmas greetings.
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
I know them, everyone. But why am I rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Why was I filled with gladness when I heard them give each other Merry Christmas? What is Merry Christmas to me?
The school is not quite deserted. A solitary child neglected by his friends is left there still.
I know it.
They left the high road by a well-remembered lane and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick. They entered the house and discovered a lonely boy reading near a feeble fire.
Poor boy.
What is the matter?
Nothing. It's too late now. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all.
Let us see another Christmas.
The room became a little darker and more dirty. There Scrooge was alone again. When all of the other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays, he was not reading now, but walking up and down despairingly. The door opened, and a little girl, much younger than he, came darting in and put her arms about his neck and kissed him.
Dear brother, I have come to bring you home, dear brother, to bring you home. Home.
Home, little fan.
Oh, yes, home for good and all.
Oh, you are
home
quite
forever and
little
ever.
fan.
Father is so much kinder than he used to be, that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night that when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home, and he said, yes, you should. And he sent me in a coach to bring you, and you're to be a man and never come back here. But first, we're to be together for Christmas long and have the merriest time in the world.
Oh, you are quite a woman, little fan. Always a delicate creature whom a breath might have withered, but she had a large heart.
She died a woman, and, as I think, children?
One child.
True. Your nephew.
Yes.
Although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here too it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
No, wasn't I apprenticed here?
See that old gentleman behind the high desk? If he were 2 inches taller, he would knock his head against the ceiling.
Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig, alive again.
Yo-ho there, Ebeneezer! Dick, yo-ho, my boys! No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick, Christmas, Ebeneezer! Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson!
It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were dismissed from public life for evermore. The floor was swept, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night.
In came a fiddler with a music book.
Then Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile.
In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable.
In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke.
In came all the young men and women employed in the business.
There were dances and more dances, and there was cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig.
During the whole of this time, I had felt like a man out of his wits. My heart and soul were in the scene, and with my former self. I corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything.
A small matter to make these silly folks so full of gratitude.
Small?
Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money. 3 or 4, perhaps.
Oh, it isn't that. It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words, in looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a
What is the matter?
Nothing in particular.
Something, I think.
No, I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now, that's all.
My time grows short. Quick.
Again, I saw myself. Older now, a man in the prime of life. I was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears.
It matters little to you. Very little. Another idol has displaced me.
What idol?
A golden one. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you.
So, I am not changed towards you, am I?
Your own feeling tells you that you are not what you were. I am. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. With a full heart for the love of him you once were, I release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no, never. But this had never been between us. Tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no.
You think not?
Goodbye, Ebeneezer. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
Spirit! Show me no more, conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?
One shadow more.
No more! No more! I don't wish to see it. Show me no more!
But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place, a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like that last girl that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw that Belle was now the mother.
Then a knocking at the door was heard, and the father came in laden with Christmas toys and presents. The joy and gratitude and ecstasy. Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever when the master of the house sat down with his daughter and mother at his own fireside.
When I thought that such a creature, graceful and full of promise, might have called me father and been a springtime in the haggard winter of my life, my sight grew very dim indeed.
Belle, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon.
Who was it?
Guess?
How can I? Oh, Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe.
Spirit, remove me from this place!
I told you. These were the shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me, I cannot bear it. Take me back, leave me, haunt me no longer. Suddenly, I was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in my own bedroom. I sank into a heavy sleep. Then, awaking, I began to wonder which of my curtains this second promised spectre would draw back. I put them every one aside with my own hands, and lying down again, established a sharp lookout all around the bed.
Now, being prepared for almost anything, Scrooge was not by any means prepared for nothing. And consequently, when the bell struck 1 and no spirit appeared, he was taken with a violent fit of trembling. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour went by, yet nothing came, only light, which was more alarming than a dozen ghosts. At last he began to think that the source and secret of this ghostly light might be in the adjoining room. He got up softly and shuffled in his slippers to the door.
Come in and know me better, man.
I entered timidly. It was my own room. There was no doubt about that, but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceilings were hung with living green from which bright, glistening berries glistened. A mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. Heaped up on the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, mince pies, plum puddings, luscious pears, immense 12 cakes, and seething bowls of punch that made my chamber dim with their delicious steam. In easy state upon this couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see. I hung my head before this spirit, for though his eyes were clear and kind, I did not like to meet them.
I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me.
I did so. It was clothed in one simple green robe or mantle, bordered with white, with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as its genial face, its sparkling eye, its open hand, its cheery voice, its unconstrained demeanor, and its joyful air.
You have never seen the like of me before.
Never.
I've never walked forth with the younger members of my family, my elder brothers born in these later years.
I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers, Spirit?
More than 1,800.
Spirit, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on a compulsion, and I learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it.
Touch my robe.
I did as I was told, and held it fast.
Suddenly they stood at the city streets on Christmas morning. There was nothing very cheerful in the climate or town, and yet there was an air of cheerfulness abroad. Half the shops were still opened and were radiant in their glory. But the grocers, oh, the grocers, great, round, pot-bellied baskets of chestnuts, pears and apples clustered high in blooming pyramids, bunches of grapes and piles of filberts, the blended scents of tea and coffee. It was not that everything was good to eat and in its Christmas dress, but that the people were jovial and full of glee, so eager in the hopeful promise of the day.
We went on then, invisible into the suburbs of the town. Perhaps it was the pleasure of the good spirit had showing off his own kind, generous, hearty nature, and his sympathy with all poor men, that led him straight to my clerk's. For there he went, and took me with him, holding to his robe. And on the threshold of the door the spirit smiled, and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling. There, inside, was Mrs. Cratchit preparing the Christmas meal, assisted by her older children, while the two smaller Cratchits, boy and girl, danced about the table.
Whatever has got your precious father, then, and your brother, Tiny Tim, and Martha weren't as late as last Christmas by a day and a half.
Here's Martha, Mother.
Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are. Well, never mind so long as you are. Come, sit ye down before the fire, my dear, and have your warm Lord bless you.
No, there's Father coming. Hide, Martha, hide.
So Martha hid herself, and in came Bob with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas, for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame.
Why? Where's Martha?
Not coming.
Not coming? Not coming upon Christmas Day.
Martha didn't like to see him disappointed, if it were only in a joke. So she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms.
And how did little Tim behave?
As good as gold and better. He's growing strong and hearty. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you had ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped that people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
Then back came Tiny Tim, escorted by his brother and sister, to his stool before the fire. Then Master Peter and the 2 young Cratchits went to fetch the goose. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigour. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce, and Martha dusted the hot plates. At last the dishes were set on, and grace was said. When the dinner was all done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth to drink a toast.
Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
Oh, no, kind spirit, say he will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Man, if man you be in heart, will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven, you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions, like this poor man's child.
I hung my head to hear my own words quoted by the Spirit.
Mr. Scrooge, I'll give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas Day, I am sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health for your sake and for the day's, not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt.
They were not a handsome family, and they were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof, and their clothes were scanty. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time together. I had my eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last.
By this time it was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the Spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires in kitchens, parlours, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Blessings on it, how the ghost exulted, how it floated on, outpouring with a generous hand, its bright and harmless mirth on everything within its reach. And then we found
ourselves in a warm, bright, gleaming room, which surprisingly turned out to be my nephew's home, where he entertained his friends and laughed with glee.
He said that Christmas was a humbug. As I live, he believed it too.
No shame for him, Fred.
He's a comical old fellow, that's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him.
I'm sure he's very rich, Fred. At least you always tell me so.
What of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is ever going to benefit us with it.
I have no patience with him.
Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here, he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us? What's the consequence? He doesn't lose much of a dinner.
Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner.
I was only going to say that the consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is that he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it if he finds me going there in good temper, year after year, and saying, Uncle Scrooge, how are you?
After tea, they had some music, and then, for a while, they played at forfeits and blind man's bluff. There might have been 20 people there, young and old, but they all played, and so did I. It was such fun that I begged like a boy to be allowed to stay until the guest departed. Here is a new game, Spirit, 1/2 hour more, only one.
It's a game called Yes and No. I will think of something and you must find out what. But I will only answer to your questions with a yes or no.
The brisk fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal.
Rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes and talked from
And lived in London, and walked about the street, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse or an ass.
A cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog.
or a pig, or a cat, or a bear.
At last my niece cried out.
I have found it! I know what it is. Fred, I know what it is.
What is it?
It's your Uncle Scrooge.
Yes! It certainly is! He has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure, and it would be ungrateful not to drink to his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine, and I say, Uncle Scrooge!
Uncle Scrooge!
A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, wherever he is.
I had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that I would have thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given me time. But the whole scene passed, and we were again upon our travels. It was a long night, and the Christmas holidays appeared to be condensed into the space of time we passed together. It was strange, too, that while I remained unaltered in my outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. I observed this change, but never spoke of it, until a moment when I noticed that its hair was grey. Are spirits' lives so short?
My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight.
Tonight?
Tonight, at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near. The chimes are ringing the 11:15 at this moment.
Forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw?
It might be a claw for the flesh there is upon it. Look here!
From the foldings of its robe it brought 2 children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. They were a boy and a girl, yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tint, a stale and shriveled hand like that of age had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Spirit, are they yours?
They are man's. The boy is ignorance. The girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all this boy. For on his brow I see that written which is doom. Deny it, slander those who tell it to you, and abide the end.
Have they no refuge or resource?
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
And then the bell struck 12.
Scrooge looked about for the ghost and saw it not. As the last ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming towards him, like a mist along the ground. When it came, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, Spirit? Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, Spirit! The phantom moved away as it had come towards me. We scarcely seemed to enter the city, but there we were, in the heart of it. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of people. I advanced to listen to their talk.
No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
Why, what's the matter with him? I thought he'd never die.
God knows.
What has he done with his money?
Oh, I haven't heard. Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know.
It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life I don't know of anybody who would go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer.
I don't mind going if a lunch is provided. But if I'm to be included, I must be fed.
I was at first surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversations apparently so trivial. Could it have something to do with the death of Jacob, my own partner? No, that was past, and this ghost province was the future. I didn't understand, but I was sure I was to learn something of my own improvement if I paid careful attention.
They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of town. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half-naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. The whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Here there was a shop where iron, old rags and bottles were brought. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, hinges, files, scales, weights, and refuse ironed of all kinds.
Sitting in among the wares he dealt in was a grey-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who smoked his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman slunk into the shop with a heavy bundle which she threw on the floor.
What odds then? What odds? Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
No, indeed!
If he wanted to keep them after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't it natural in his lifetime? If he'd had been, he'd had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying, gasping out his last there alone all by himself.
It's the truest word that was ever spoke. It's a judgment on him.
I wish it was a little heavier judgment, and so it should have been, you may depend upon it. If I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it.
Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it, and having unfastened a great many knots, dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff.
What do you call this? Bed curtains?
Ah! Bed curtains!
You don't mean to say you took them down range and all with him lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune and you'll certainly do it.
I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can't get anything in it by reaching out. For the sake of such a man as he was, I promise you. Don't drop oil upon those blankets now.
These blankets?
Well, who else do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without them, I dare say.
I hope he didn't die of anything catchy, eh?
Don't you be afraid of that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things if he did.
I listened to this dialogue in horror and looked at them with a detestation and disgust. I was shuddering from head to foot when old Joe produced a bag with money in it and counted out her gains into her hand.
This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead.
Spirit! I see the case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this?
Scrooge recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed on which there lay something covered up with a ragged sheet. The room was very dark. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man.
Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted that the slightest raising of it would have disclosed the face. Scrooge thought of it, felt how easy it would be to do, and longed to do it, but had no power to withdraw the veil.
Spirit! This is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me, let us go. Spirit, I understand you, and I would lift the sheet if I could, but I have not the power. Spirit, I have not the power. If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death, show that person to me, Spirit, I beseech you. The phantom spread its dark robe before me for a moment, like a wing, and then withdrawing it revealed a room by daylight where a mother and her children were.
She was expecting someone, and with anxious eagerness, for she walked up and down the room, started at every sound, looked out the window, glanced at the clock, tried but in vain to work her needle, and could hardly bear the voices of the children in their play. At length the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door.
And met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. There was a remarkable expression in it now, a kind of serious delight of which he felt ashamed, and which he struggled to repress.
Is it good or bad?
Bad.
We are quite ruined.
No, there is hope yet, Caroline. He is dead.
To whom will our debt be transferred?
I don't know, but before that time we shall be ready with the money. And even if we were not, it would be a bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor and his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline.
Yes, their hearts were lighter. The children's faces were brighter, and it was a happier house for this man's death. The only emotion that the ghost could show me caused by the event was one of pleasure. I begged the spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with the death, or that dark chamber which we left just now will be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted Scrooge through several streets familiar to his feet, and then they entered poor Bob Cratchit's house and found the mother and children seated round the fire.
Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet. The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face.
The blackness of the fabric hurts my eyes. Oh, poor Tiny Tim. the colour that makes him weak by candlelight. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time, past it rather, but I think he walked a little slower than he used these last few evenings. I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. And there's your father at the door.
Good evening, family. Oh my, look at all the work you've done. What a marvelous industry and speed. You'll be done long before Sunday.
Sunday. You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I've seen the place where he will lie. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child, my little child. I must tell you who I saw today. He was so very kind. I've only met him once, and still he took notice of me in my distress and stopped me to inquire.
Why, who was it?
Mr. Scrooge's nephew, Fred. I told him of our loss. He said, "I am heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, and heartily sorry for your good wife. Heartily sorry. If I can be of service to you in any way, pray come to me." Now, it wasn't for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us.
I'm sure he's a good soul.
I am sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that there was among us.
Never.
And I know that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it.
No, never.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Spirit, Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but know not how. Tell me, what man was that whom we saw lying dead?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come went on, and Scrooge accompanied it until they reached an iron gate, a churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name Scrooge had now to learn lay underneath the ground.
It was walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of death, not life, choked up with too much burying. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced towards it.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Still, the ghost pointed downwards to the grave by which it stood. I crept towards it, trembling as I went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave.
Ebeneezer Scrooge!
Ebeneezer Scrooge!
Ebeneezer Scrooge!
Ebeneezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No, Spirit, oh no! Spirit, hear me! I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for this intercourse, why show me this if I am past all hope? Good Spirit, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, Scrooge saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Yes. And the bedpost is my own. The bed is my own. The room is my own. My bed curtains are here, not torn down, ring and all. I am here. Best and happiest of all the time before me is my own, to make amends in. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, oh Jacob, on my knees. I don't know what to do. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everyone. Everybody a Happy New Year to all the world.
Scrooge went into the sitting room and saw the saucepan that the gruel was in, the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered, the corner where the ghost of Christmas Present sat, the window where he saw the wandering spirits.
It's all right. It's all true. It's all happened. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Suddenly, I heard the church bells ringing out the lustiest peals I had ever heard.
Clash!
Clang,
Hammer!
ding dong,
Ding dong!
hammer.
Hammer! Clash!
Oh, glorious, glorious!
He ran to the window, opened it, and put out his head.
No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky sweet, fresh air, merry bells, oh, glorious, glorious!
He saw a boy on the streets in Sunday clothes.
What's today?
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day! I haven't missed it! Oh, the spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Oh, of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one on the corner?
I should hope I do.
An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one.
What? The one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Yes, my boy.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
What?
I'm in earnest. Go and buy it and tell them to bring it here that I may give them the direction to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
He went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there waiting, the knocker caught his eye.
I shall love it. As long as I live. I scarcely ever looked at it before. Oh, what a wonderful knocker. Oh, here's the poulterer. Hello, how are you? Merry Christmas. And what a turkey. Its legs would never have held up the weight of its body. Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town. You must have a cab.
He dressed himself in all his best and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, and he regarded everyone with a delighted smile, and 3 or 4 good-humoured fellows said,
Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you.
Of all the jolly sounds I have ever heard, those were the jolliest in my ears. I had not gone far when, coming towards me, I beheld the man who had walked into my counting house the day before. It sent a pang across my heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon me when we met, but I knew what path lay straight before me, and I took it. My dear sir, how do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very, very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, that is my name, and I fear it may not be a pleasant one to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness to...
Lord bless me! My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. will you do me that favor?
My dear sir, I don't know what to say to
Oh,
such generosity.
Don't say anything, please. Come and see me. Will you come and see me?
I will.
Oh, thank you. I am much obliged to you. I thank you 50 times. Bless you. I went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro and patted children on the head and questioned beggars and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield me pleasure. In the afternoon, I turned my steps toward my nephew's house. I passed the door a dozen times before I had the courage to go up and knock. But I made a dash and did it.
Why, bless my soul. Who's that?
It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, friend?
Uncle Scrooge. Of course, come in.
Let me in. It's a mercy he didn't shake my arm off. I felt at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. Everyone looked just the same. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness, and a wonderful end to Christmas Day.
Scrooge was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. He sat with his door wide open that he might see Bob Cratchit come in. If he could only be there first and catch him coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon.
And he did. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9, no Bob. 1:15, no Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Then he arrived. His hat was off before he opened the door. His scarf, too. He was on his stool in a jiffy.
Mr. Cratchit, what do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I'm behind my time.
You are? Ah, yes, I think you are. Step this way, please. Sir, if you please.
It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary. A Merry Christmas, Bob! A merrier Christmas, my good fellow, than I've given you in many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. I haven't lost my senses, Bob. I've come to them. Now, make up the fires before we freeze to death in here, and buy a second coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more.
And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father.
He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world.
Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not laugh. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him.
He had no further intercourse with spirits, but ever afterwards it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, everyone.